90 degrees is a reasonable threshold for hot in Pennsylvania, and such days really aren't that unusual in summer, especially outside of the mountains. But 100-degree days, well, they are rare anywhere in the state. And based on historical data, here's how often you'd expect the temperature to reach 100 degrees. Southeast of the mountains, it's about once every 2 to 3 years. Frequency once every 7 years or so in Pittsburgh, once every 10 to 15 years in Scranton and State College. In Erie, it's only happened once in 80 years of record keeping. That's where we get that estimate right there. And in places such as Bradford, Coudersport, and Mount Pocono in the higher elevations, 100 degrees has not been officially observed. Now here's the highest temperature on record for a few places. It's 107 in Harrisburg, that was in July of 1966. 106 in Philadelphia in August of 1918. The records are a little lower, as you would expect, in Scranton, State College, and Pittsburgh. Those were all set on the hottest day of the last 2 decades, July 16, 1988. The asterisk means the records were also set in previous years. Erie's only 100 on record also occurred in that very hot summer of 1988. Now, I've taken all the 100-degree days, all the 100-degree readings from the 7 major reporting stations, plus State College, and broken them down based on what month they occurred. There haven't been any 100-degree days in May on record. The earliest in June is on June the 4th. The most 100-degree days, no surprise here, have been in the first half of July, with the latter half of that month being a close second. The frequency does fall off pretty quickly in August, but there have even been 100-degree days in that first half of September. The latest was on September 12th, 1931, and that was actually in Williamsport. Now, if I had to give one day the distinction of being the hottest on record statewide, I'd have to go with this one, July 9th, 1936, in the heart of the Dust Bowl years. It got above 100 in all but the extreme northwest, and that 106 in Williamsport represents the hottest on record there. It even reached 104 in Towanda and 103 in Clearfield. Plus, the Pennsylvania state record was set that day in Phoenixville, that's in Chester County, just northwest of Valley Forge, 111 degrees, which was also reached the next day, which was just about as hot statewide. Now, with all the talk about global warming recently, it's interesting to break down the 100-degree days by decade. I'll only go back to the 1920s because data is pretty sparse before then. You probably remember a number of hot days in the 1980s and 1990s. That certainly shows up here. But there were even more in the 1950s and especially in the 1930s. The 1970s had the least, and that makes sense because for most of the state, that decade had the wettest or second wettest summer on record. And though we still have a few years left in the current decade, so far it just hasn't been that hot, at least not by this measure. In fact, there have only been 3 100-degree days this decade at the primary observing sites, 2 in Philadelphia in August 2001 and 1 day in Harrisburg in August 2002. So it's been almost 5 years. And I suspect the waiting will continue, though Fred will have the details in the extended forecast next.